I'd like to call the meeting of Finance and Audit Committee to order. Can we do the roll call, please? Aye, or here.
Director Wood. Director Wood is absent now. Director Jones.
Here.
And Director Clark, who's filling in as alternate. Thank you.
Now we'll have a public opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within the committee's scope, including items or not on the agenda. Do we have any speakers? Nope. All right, we'll move on to the consent items. Everyone said the items?
A second.
Okay.
Please call the roll.
Yes. Director Weber.
Aye.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Director Clark. Thank you. Motion passes. The consent calendar is approved.
Next up, it was the action summary minutes. Recommendations. Do we have a presentation?
No, we approved those on the.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're just going to the presentation item.
Then the next item would be quarterly investment report. I believe that's O'Toole. There's no name on this, but.
Yes.
Is that you?
Yes,
Dave?
it's him. I don't know.
Okay.
Quarterly investment report. Okay. Great. Good evening, directors, Fire Chief House, colleagues, and members of the public. This is the Finance and Audit bi-monthly fiscal report for the first 2 months of the fiscal year. So that's through August 31. This presentation and report are provided to help you monitor the fiscal health of the district and compare how we're doing against what we've budgeted in the most recent budget, which of course is the final budget passed in September. Moving slides here. There we go. Okay. This chart shows general fund cash balance trends through August 31. The red line is current year, and the green line is past year. You notice that the red line after 2 months is above the past year mark. That's a difference of about 18 million. So cash was $18 million higher than last year at the end of August. That's mainly a difference in timing of expenditures. We have transfers to other funds we haven't made yet and some supplies that haven't been purchased yet. So expect those lines to narrow, get a little closer to one another as the year progresses. The overall shape of the fund reflects the dry period funding process that we do, where we borrow from the county to get us through periods where we don't have enough cash. And then those two bump ups that you see in December and January and again in April is due to mainly property taxes coming in at those points. Looking at general fund revenues, this slide shows that at the start of the fiscal year, the district is generally tracking with prior year revenues after 2 months. So the green again is prior year. The blue line we see here is the budget. So we're tracking fairly close to budget too. Let's see, at the end of August 2022, revenues were 7.5 million. At the end of August of this year, we're at 8.5 million. But the blue line's a little higher at 10.9 million. So we're a little under what was in the final budget after a couple of months. And again, you can see the overall shape of the chart shows the two sort of peaks in those surge points where we get revenues in from property tax. So that's where we really will see major changes. This slide is is a component of general fund revenues, medic revenues. And you can see that we're off to a strong start with medic revenues. It's actually higher than budget and past year. We're at 10.2 million. That's $1.9 million higher than prior year and about $1 million higher than what we had in the budget. And then looking at another component of revenues, this is the Public Provider Ground Emergency Medical Transport Program. So this isn't strictly speaking a general fund revenue. It's a revenue in another fund that gets transferred to the general fund, but it's a significant component of the general fund revenue. So I wanted to take a moment or two to go over this slide with you. Let's see. So it shows the PPGMT revenues for fiscal year 22-23, which is the white box at the top. And shows that the total revenues we're a little over 2 million And then we had a projected difference between what we anticipate receiving on an even basis and what we actually received, a difference of almost 8 million. And then when you look at the yellow shaded box below, that's this fiscal year. And it shows that we projected revenue a little higher for each month, about 2.2 million. That's based on the revised estimates in the final budget. And an actual revenue went from 1.8 million in July up to 1.9 million in August. So we're still a little short of what we expect to be receiving every month. So that's one factor. But then, of course, there's also the prior month totals that we have not received yet. So if you look at those first 6 months of the program, which are the last 6 months of the prior fiscal year, there's that number, there's that 7.9 million shortfall there. And then after 2 months, you can see the bottom right of the bottom box, 600,000. So together about an 8.6 million short of what we are owed actually for transports that have actually occurred. We're about $8.6 million short in what is owed. And of course, the conversation I mentioned before, we're having conversations with the plans, and they're obviously paying more every month, but we still have those prior months to catch up on. What I can tell you, because it's a new program, we're still kind of figuring this out, but the last time we did a GMT revenue, which is about 10 years ago, it took about 18 months for the plans to catch up and pay us. So we built that assumption into this year's budget, which means we expect in this year by June 30th to be fully caught up. And we'll be reporting this, I know that we'll be reporting this in the bi-monthly fiscal reports and actually more often on a monthly basis as well. So that's the PPGEMT picture. You just want to keep a close eye on that and report regularly as well. Oh, sure.
Mr. Chair, I have a quick comment, please. Yeah, thank you for distinguishing that. Mr. O'Toole and I talked earlier in the week about that debt. It's about 8.6, and we exchanged comments about the concern of it's like, two birds in the bush versus one in hand. So we want to make sure that we don't make budget and fiscal decisions based on revenue that we do not have, because that 18, that's very positive, and it will happen, but if it might not happen until the next fiscal year, 24-25. So I think it's very, very important that we just count the revenues that we receive. We've been lucky, or whatever you want to call it, in the past, where a lot of times property taxes have come in a bit above what was estimated. And it's very important for us as Board of Finance and Board of Directors that we keep in mind that these are projections, and we can't base expenditures today on potential revenue tomorrow, because it could get even further delayed. That's out of our control.
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll move us from general fund revenues to general fund expenditures on this slide. This is total general fund expenditures. You can notice the blue line, the budget year number is substantially higher than where we are with the red line. So in this case, it's a good thing to be lower after a couple of months. It means our expenditures are about 14 million or so below what we had in the budget. And the reason for that, as I said earlier, is largely because of transfers out of the general fund that go to the capital facilities fund that we just haven't made yet. So it's still sitting in the general fund, as well as some sort of service and supplies items that have not been paid for yet, not been purchased yet, I should say. This next slide is labor costs, which of course is an element of our general fund expenditures. Labor costs make up 82.5% of our total general fund revenues in fiscal year 23-24. And as you can see on the slide, the lines are tracking pretty close. The blue line and the red line are tracking pretty closely. That's actually a difference about 200,000, for about 200,000 under what we had in the budget after 2 months. Let's see. Labor costs are about $4.4 million higher than prior year, so it's over the green line by about 4.4 million. That, of course, is mainly due to the wage increases that came with the new memorandums of understanding that were enacted in January of 2023. Or were effective in January 2023. Excuse me. This next slide is a general fund reserve balances. Similar to the cash balance slide, there are 2 dips and 2 surges for reflecting the property tax coming in and the borrowing we do from the county again. And after a couple months, the red line is tracking closely with prior year, the green line. Across the top, purple line is the 15%. So if you want to reference where we are relative to a 15% reserve, you can kind of see the differences there. And then we anticipate at the far right, the final reserve being 14%. So that's where we think the red line will end up on June 30th of this fiscal year. And that's what's in our final budget, of course. The next slide is our CERT fund as of August 31. So this is the California Employers Retirement Benefit Trust, which is what we use to set aside funds to pay other post-employment benefit liabilities, so your retirement, your healthcare related costs in retirement. And again, the CERT fund is, as I often say, it's not a cash fund. It's not available for us to use for anything other than those debts when it's time to pay them. The total fund, you can see at the top of the slide there, 75.3 million, which is about 1 million more than the last bi-monthly fiscal report. It's a pretty decent accumulation in a couple months. And you'll notice the green line is, the green area on the far right has shifted up almost to where it was in the summer of 2001. So significant market recovery in that fund as well. And that's the CERT update. So your takeaways. I've got 4 there for you. Actual general fund trash, excuse me, actual, we don't do trash. Actual general fund cash trended well above prior year, $18 million higher than prior year. So we have substantial cash right now for reasons I explained, that we basically have some expenditures that haven't happened yet. Overall general fund revenue is off to a slow start, 2.4 million less than final budget forecast for the end of August. And that's mainly property taxes at a slow time, haven't come in quite as much as we anticipated. PPGMT revenues are still climbing, but there's still an $8.6 million debt owed for prior month's transports, as we discussed. And general fund expenditures are $14 million lower than final budget. And those are your takeaways for the 23-24 bi-monthly fiscal report. So subject to your questions, that concludes my presentation.
Okay. I have a couple of questions, comments. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have something, Dee? No, go ahead. Oh, alrighty. Going back a few slides, you made the comment that labor costs were 82% of the budget. But this board, this committee and board need to have a discussion about what is included in that. For example, does that include the PERS costs?
Yes.
Okay.
So the labor costs, yes, the labor costs include every component of benefits and compensation. So it is PERS, it's the SCRS elements, it's workers' compensation, it's every incentive, it's medical costs. All of those go into labor costs. It's the term labor costs is, I think it's just how it's been referred to for a while. I know sometimes you may think of labor as like a specific, just the compensation piece or just wage. But when we use it in the finance office, we're talking about all compensation and benefits.
No, I appreciate that, because we discussed that at some earlier meetings, and just for general purpose knowledge, that non-divisional costs were found somewhere else in our budget line, and we need to make sure that the labor costs on these graphs and stuff, everything is complete in one place and it's not divvied up. So I appreciate that attention. The other part of that 82%, does that include the PPGEMT projections?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And when we it did not, obviously it didn't because of it didn't in earlier years because of PPGMT is new. But when we the policy, that the budget policy that we reviewed and you approved a few months ago, that includes that in the policy, that we will include the PPGMT as part of the revenue that is used as that calculation.
Well, I think it's important for us to perhaps revisit that because of this 8.6 million debt. Because historically, whenever we started the GEMT, we never counted that in the budget until we had it in hand. So I would strongly suggest that we have another look at that particular budget policy. Again, for steadiness and confidence in the projection of our revenues and expenditures.
And if I could just add one clarifying, that one important difference between GMT and PPGMT is the PPGMT is in statute. And so there was a concern that GMT without statutory protections or, existence was more susceptible. So that was part of just for information background, that was part of a rationale that including it. But I appreciate the question.
That, so thank you for clarifying that.
Statute. It's base guaranteed, if you will.
I mean, the legislature can always change statute.
Right. I know they can change it, but
it's
it's consistent.
It's much more solid ground than GMT or VRP for that example.
Right.
For that case.
That is good news. However, statute doesn't mean we're all familiar with the term slow pay.
Yeah.
And the district doesn't need to get caught up in that and be in arrears. That's all I'm saying is that cautionary, perhaps more conservative approach to the budget outlook. Let's see if I had, and one other thing, Mr. Chair, again, not for tonight, but at some point, we did, perhaps I missed it, apologies in advance, a discussion about the CPI and what goes into that CPI. We initiated that with some questions a month or two ago, maybe 2 months. And it would behoove us to have a, not necessarily long, but at least an in-depth discussion about CPI and the different variations, urban, rural, et cetera, just for general knowledge. And that might be good for the whole board, Mr. Chair. Just a suggestion.
Great. Thanks for reminding us of that. Yeah. I forgot.
Any other questions? Dr. Clark, no?
No, I just ditto what Director Jones said.
Dave, in the actual budget, is the labor costs, are they actually separated and broken apart so that we can see everything that Director Jones is talking about and you're talking about? No, you don't have to look it up or anything else. As long as it's there.
Page number. Yes.
Page 30.
Right. Okay. Page 30. Thank you.
So that was offline.
Okay.
There is something there.
That's fine. I'll find it, Dave.
41. Yep.
All right. If there are no other questions, then we will adjourn this meeting. Yeah. We will adjourn the meeting. Boom. I don't have a gavel. Can I
Thank
borrow
you,
your
sir.
gavel?
Certainly.